Good morning and welcome. Thank you for listening to Back Talk with Sharona. Happy Saturday. It's Saturday morning. A Saturday morning show always sounds like a great idea until I wake up early on Saturday morning and have to try to get all together and prepared for this. But we're going to have a big show today in our first hour. This week's edition of Chopping It Up with Matt Wood. I sat down with my buddy Matt Wood and we talked a little bit about debate night. We talked about the news about Donald Trump and the violation of the Cuba embargo back in 1998. How big is that? What will people make of that? Matt and I talked about that a little bit. And then in our second hour, I'll be joined live by my friend Jennifer Eakins, who covers the Denver Broncos and writes about fantasy sports. It's a big Saturday for our college football teams. Georgia and Tennessee play this afternoon. Georgia coming off that just a bad loss last week, and they're experiencing some struggles, and it's always difficult. Jennifer and I will talk about this, but it's always difficult when you move on from a coach who's been there for a long time, like they did with Mark Richt. And Georgia's going to be in a bit of transition for a few years, and fans are going to have to be patient. Ha ha, I know, right? Like fans can ever be patient. But that's the situation that they found themselves in. And for Tennessee fans, for Volunteer fans, they've gone through a similar transition. Unfortunately for Tennessee, early on they made extremely bad decisions and spent several years kind of in football purgatory with Lane Kiffin and Derek Dooley, and hopefully they've got the right guy in Butch Jones, and they're currently undefeated. It's amazing, but they are. Today is going to be a big test. I know Georgia is struggling right now, but it's never an easy game. Really not an easy game in SEC football. So Jennifer and I will talk about that. We'll talk some fantasy football. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos. I'm finally buying into Trevor Siemian. I picked up Trevor Siemian in a couple of fantasy football leagues this past week, and my DFS diary for Inside the Pylon will be coming out in the next couple of days. I actually picked him up in DFS. I'm playing him this week in DFS, so we'll see how that goes. Very interested to get Jennifer's thoughts on that. And of course, fantasy football, the Sammy Watkins news. It's not that surprising. And fortunately, I really only had him in one league. It was in a league where the bench is. We don't have a deep bench, and I have a bunch of injuries, so I felt comfortable in just going ahead and moving on. He'll be out at least for 8 weeks, and so we'll monitor his situation. But it's sad news, but they're wise to shut him down and let him try to heal. There's some information out there that maybe they should have done that earlier. Jennifer and I will talk about that and more week that nature. So stay tuned in for that. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Josh Taylor, who joined me on Wednesday with some fantastic discussion about the Pittsburgh Steelers, what's going on with them, their injury situation, and whether Mike Tomlin should be on the hot seat. We also got you your week 4 picks. We'll see how I do this week. And I also made some Vegas picks against the spread for my friend Dan Head. You can check those out. We'll tweet out a link to his website where you can check that out and see. I did dreadfully last week, in large part because I believed too heavily in the Houston Texans and not enough in Bill Belichick. and also because of the Steelers and their injuries. It's so hard to predict injuries. It's impossible to predict injuries and how they're going to impact a game. So anyway, we'll see how I do this week. Hopefully a little bit better. I'll have to pull those picks together and we'll talk about them. I wanted to talk about, there was an article this past week. I haven't found it yet. Maybe while I'm playing my chat with Matt Wood, I can find that. I want to talk about this article. This apparently a guy in tech wrote an article. It was all over my timeline. I just didn't have a chance to take a look at it. But he said that if women wanted to get jobs in tech, they had to act like men, and they had to basically fake their online persona to look like men. And he was rightfully brought a little bit to task about that. But it is interesting that there's still that kind of bias in a lot of different professions. Well, I'll try to find that, and maybe we can talk about that in the latter part of this first hour. It's always an interesting discussion. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's not going to matter anyway, because as I was preparing this morning for the show, I jumped on Gizmodo, and apparently, well, we know that there's a major hurricane that's just developed. Here we are, October 1st. Happy October, there's a major hurricane that's just developed that's going to hit Jamaica and cause a bunch of damage. We'll have to monitor that. But also, apparently, that there is a massive earthquake along the San Andreas Fault that's about to produce a significant earthquake. And we'll tweet out the link to this article, too. We live in interesting times, and maybe the powers that be, the higher powers, are trying to tell us something. I don't know. Very interesting. We'll take a real quick break, and then when we come back, my chat with Matt Wood, we sat down again for debate night. It was interesting for me watching debate night, and I have my we've talked about Hillary Clinton a lot on this show, and I understand a lot of the reservations out there, but it was interesting watching the debate as a woman, and Matt and I talk about that and a whole lot more. So again, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, my chat with Matt Wood. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona, so stay tuned in. All right, welcome back. This is this week's segment of Chopping It Up with my good buddy Matt Wood, and we're going to we turned our attention on the podcast this week back to politics a little bit.
Sorry.
Oh. I was like, is that me? Because it's usually me. We did pick up some dirt on Donald Trump, and we are going to talk about it. No, the first debate was this week, and we talked a little bit about that on the podcast Wednesday. Matt and I are going to talk about that tonight. We're recording this for Saturday morning's podcast on Thursday evening, right before what it should be a pretty bad Thursday night football game, which I will probably watch on Twitter and try to relax a little bit, because Matt and I have both been busy this week, and which is why we're sitting down on Thursday night. So welcome back, Matt. I'm so happy we're able to get this together and do it.
No, it's great to be back.
Yeah. So the debates we're going to talk about the Donald Trump thing here in a minute, but I do want to get your thoughts on the first debate. It was it Monday night or Tuesday? It was Tuesday night, right?
No, it was Monday night.
Monday night, okay. Yeah, that's right, because I didn't watch Monday Night Football. You're right. Yeah.
I was like, it's Monday night debate, y'all.
Yeah.
That debate went about just how I envisioned it in my head.
Yeah.
Like, one would come out there prepared. One would come out there, being a moron. And it doesn't take much to bait Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The moment you attack his ego, he's gotta try to set the record straight.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he was an idiot.
Yeah.
His handlers had no control over him because they couldn't have control over him.
Well, nobody has any control over him. I legitimately felt sorry for the moderator, Lester Holt, who seems like an extremely nice man, but I was like, dude, you're not moderating, you're not doing anything.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how the selection process goes, and, Trump was such a fucking baby about these damn things that it's like, oh no, I don't know if I could do a debate with that guy because these people did it in the Republican debates, and I think they all screwed me over or whatever. So, so maybe he doesn't have a whole lot of debate moderating experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean. Yeah, he was just a freaking. He became his stupid, ignorant self. Then he goes out on, and I even told my wife, I'm like, what's going to happen tonight? Obviously Hillary's going to be prepared. He won't be. He'll be all freaking all pissy or whatever, and then he'll get on Twitter and go, oh, I was going to be so awesome, but I just didn't feel like it. Or oh, this is rigged. Something happened. It's exactly how he does it. It's like, I'm never at fault.
Yeah.
Like, there's psychological disorders where you have to get examined if you're never at fault. But yeah, and then, so the next debate's the vice presidential debate. So that's going to be a snooze fest because they're going to actually talk policy.
Now, how many times are Hillary and Donald supposed? I thought they were supposed to debate 2 more times. They are.
Okay. So so the vice presidential debate is next Tuesday on the 4th. Then the 9th, which I believe is a Sunday, that will be the next presidential debate, and that's going to be a town hall style. So the moderator is going to have questions, but also the audience is going to ask questions. Mm-hmm. And granted, they're probably planted questions and whatever. It's like it's all theater, right? And even then, he's not going to have like a stack of index cards that he's reading off of to keep his script in line. So, of course, somebody's going to ask a question that he's going to find offensive and then attack them on Twitter later on that night. Like, oh, hey.
Well, that does seem to be his MO. And, it was interesting because we did talk about this on the Wednesday morning podcast. And I wrote about it in the podcast wrap-up that we post after every show. And our chats are included in those on Bat Talk with Sharona. And, as a woman, I was sitting there, and, of course, the first thing that I notice is that that Donald Trump just repeatedly interrupts her. Even when it's her turn to talk, and she's supposed to, and any woman, I guarantee you, easily 95% of the women women in this country, I don't think that that's a high percentage, have had to deal with this in their lifetime. I mean, you learn from an early age that you're going to get interrupted, and that your voice is I don't want to get into it, but anyway, watching her this is the most powerful politician in our country, and he's berating and trying to bully her when it's her turn to talk, and I was like, just shut up and let her talk.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that initially that kind of stuck out to me. But that is his MO, and as the debate went on, and then this story comes out about the Miss Universe contestant, who was Latina, I forget which country she was from, but you know who I'm talking about. And he
Yeah.
bullied her for gaining some weight and called her fat and Miss Housekeeper and all of this stuff. And but that's his MO. When you disagree with him, it's all personal and awful.
Oh yeah, yeah. And yeah, he's just let's see, where'd she? Venezuela? Yes.
Venezuela, okay. All right.
Yeah. 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 I mean, what else can be said about the asshole, right? I mean, it. He's going to go out there and do it, and now he's trying to lay low, and he'll go back to his prepared speeches on his teleprompter, which is not a bad thing. Everybody uses a damn teleprompter.
Well, I mean.
But he'll go to that, and then it'll come up, to the next debate. He'll fuck around then too, and he'll probably go after somebody who asked a damn question. Like, oh hey, I don't know, I just found their Twitter. Hey, all my followers, wouldn't it suck if you bombarded them and sit outside their house or something? I could see him doing that. And then who knows by the third debate?
Yeah.
I mean, with the third debate, that's October. Oh, it's in the double digits, but that leaves literally 3 weeks to the election.
Well, I'm even wondering if it's going to happen because, and we'll segue here in a few minutes and talk about this latest thing with Donald Trump. It's interesting. A lot of things came out in this first debate that were very interesting, and the first thing that beyond the constantly interrupting the woman thing, and the appearances and whatever, the thing that sticks out in my mind is the tax thing, and of course, he's been adamant about not releasing his taxes and using he's being audited as an excuse and blah blah blah. And so finally it comes out that he hasn't paid any. He seemed pretty proud about that, and and said, "Well, you just squander it." And we mentioned this on the show Wednesday morning. Somebody, I need to go out and find that tweet and include it. But somebody in response to that retweeted the photo of his wife and child, his latest wife, I should say, and his child in their gold-plated mansion bathroom or foyer or wherever it was taken, and he hasn't squandered eons of money.
Oh, and then it's but guess what? All those people that sit there and made that gold-plated bathroom or built his house, they all had to pay taxes.
Well, they got stiffed too. He has stiffed so many people in his lifetime. I mean, there are so many stories out there about people who have done work for him who haven't been paid for it. And of course, the Miss Universe, she got stiffed in as far as getting compensation. And that's just such there's overwhelming evidence that he doesn't settle his debts and doesn't pay people for the work that they do for him. But the thing is, and I want to ask you about this. Get your thoughts on this. His followers are so die-hard; they don't seem to care.
Oh no, they don't. I mean, I guess you could say that with any candidate. I mean, look at Gary Johnson. The whole what is Aleppo, and then just a couple of days ago, someone asked him what his favorite foreign leader was, and he drew a blank there. I mean, that should be pretty damning of a presidential candidate. But yet people are like, oh, no. I mean, but I will say Trump supporters are pretty much the worst of the bunch in the sense of, nope, he didn't lie. He right from his mouth, he said the mic was rigged. It was rigged. It's I don't know what type of disconnect that is,
Mm-hmm.
where you want like this transparent government so the government can stop screwing you around, and this guy is literally lying to your face.
I mean, it's
And just, you know, I mean, and I know.
crazy. You know, it was like he would say something, and you know, one of the more brilliant and I think underrated aspects of the debate was that Hillary Clinton and her people were fact checking him as the debate was going on, and it was like he would say something, and there would be and then she actually actually'd him on stage, which was kind of funny. But you know, it was like everything that was coming out of his mouth was completely contradicted by evidence, and you know, even in one, and this is so funny to me. I mean, we laugh, but God help us if he gets elected, right?
Yeah.
But you know, one of the things that's so funny to me is that she mentions that during the debate that they're fact checking him. He was like, "Well, check my website," and she pointed people to her Twitter and website and everything. Well, we're doing that same thing, and you can check my blah 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 blah. Well, they weren't doing it. It was just a lie.
Yeah.
You know, he is the kind. And listen, I have dated a guy just like this who would lie about stupid stuff, like if you know the sun is shining. No, it's not. It's raining outside. Well, you can just look outside and see that the sun is shining. You know, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's obviously some sort of pathological disorder is there, and and then you want to talk about Hillary's health.
Yeah, and then the sniffing thing. Did you catch that? The whole sniffing thing. See the whole thing.
Oh yeah, well you know, a man his age probably needs a lot of coke to get through.
That's what Howard Dean said, and I don't know. I mean, does he? Maybe he does. I don't know. You know.
Probably not, but it's fun to joke about.
It's fun to joke about in a way, but you're right. You know, so much was made about her cough and the fact that she had pneumonia and everything, in a not very nice fashion. I mean, it was done in a terrible fashion, and then he stands up there and sniffs the whole time, and then blames his inability to answer the questions on a bad microphone. It was like
yeah, it's that was just atrocious. And I mean, and now the polls are kind of showing it. I mean, because it seems every time he's on the national stage, he does something, somebody criticizes him, and then he's sitting there picking on somebody for a week and a half, and he grows his divide. Now, granted, his handlers told him to shut up for for the whole month of August for the most part, so obviously his poll numbers started going back up because everybody was focused on Hillary, especially after the pneumonia thing. But yeah.
One of the other things, and I definitely want to ask you about this Cuba thing and kind of talk a little bit about it too. But another thing that came out, well, let me think. There was she doesn't have the stamina to do it, and the whole he was completely. Listen, one of the things that I think troubles me the most is how readily everyone wants to just breeze past and ignore the fact that this guy couldn't name a constitutional tenet to save his life. He has no idea what's in our Constitution, how the government works, how it's supposed to work. And one of the things, and this is not funny, it was kind of ironic funny, I suppose, was about the stop and frisk thing. He was completely and utterly wrong about, and corrected the moderator, who was right, and then had the gall to say, "Well, I have the temperament to be president, and you don't."
Yeah. It's like the moment some freaking country's leader and goes, no, we're not doing that. Strictly, as our sovereign nation, I cannot, as a sovereign leader, go along with this plan. So no, we're out. He will. Who knows what the fuck he'll do? Send an airstrike? You know what? If the UK goes, sorry, we got our shit to deal with right now. We can't be a part of that. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Huh? Plant a dirty bomb in London? I mean, Jesus. And God, this guy pisses me off. But
It's just so crazy, And I understand that Hillary has her own issues and all of that, and yeah, I mean, if you're in politics,
yeah,
nobody, you can look at any politician and there are things that you want to raise your eyebrows about and question about, and we should, as as media reporters, good citizens, we should keep an eye on things because it's important, right? And when there are questions about conflicts of interest and what have you, they definitely should be looked into. They should be talked about. But when you look at the overwhelming volume of evidence against these two candidates, the one with the most troublesome history of ethical and legal issues it's Donald Trump, and yet Hillary can't seem to shake the Crooked Hillary label.
Oh yeah, and she'll probably have that moniker for the rest of her days, whatever. To the Republicans, she is the Margaret Thatcher in a way of just freaking hate watching.
Yeah, except that Margaret Thatcher really was kind of sinister in a lot of but yeah, no, I agree.
That's how they depict her. It's like there'll be a moment in the future, natural causes and stuff. I mean, everybody dies, and the day she does, it's going to be on all over social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Ding dong, the witch is dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is an easy prediction to make, regardless if he becomes president or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were there was a photo circulating on Twitter, and if you Google image it, you can find similar photos too of excuse me, a fella. Hang on just a second. Pardon me. I needed to cough a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Of a fella at a rally, or I don't know if it was at the actual debate or if it was at a rally or whatever, but he was wearing a T-shirt that you can purchase online at some T-shirt place that said, I wish Hillary had married OJ instead.
Yeah. Horrible, disgusting people.
I mean...
And here's just a little tangent in a way of, kind of going back to the, because you just brought up the supporters again and kind of going back to like the diehard stuff. I mean, George Will, who's, if anybody's not familiar, is like the, bastion of conservatism. He is like the Warren Buffett in a way of the Republicans. And, so he pens a thing saying, I mean, he is adamant, like, never Trump. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, if Trump gets, anything Trump, if Trump gets elected, it's the end of conservatism in America. And you had people calling him a rhino. I was like, you're calling George fucking Will a rhino?
Yeah.
How fucking twisted do you have to be?
Well, do you remember? I mean, how much is Ted Cruz's soul worth? I mean, seriously. I mean, you remember what Donald Trump had to say about Cruz and his wife, and it's like. But the good news, and there is good news, is that there are a large number of Republicans that have, I don't want to say jump ship, but that are I think we can objectively say doing what's best for this country, and are saying we can't let this man be president.
Yeah.
And we have to do something, and and I commend them, and I think you and I have talked about this, Matt. If any, and we want to talk about the Cuba thing, but if any good can come out of this entire situation, it's hopefully that the Republican Party can be saved, because it has been overrun and overtaken by the lunatic fringe, and and that, in my opinion, is bad for democracy.
Yeah. And I mean, you get that whole like a conservative view is a small government. A Trump president is not going to be a small government, especially with everything he says. You know how much manpower it's going to take, and spending, and all that stuff.
Crazy. So over the last, I don't know, 12 hours or so, this report came out, and I could not pull up the original Newsweek report for some reason, so I had to pull it up from the Guardian, and we'll be tweeting out a link to this. There is a report that Donald Trump and one of his companies violated the Cuba embargo that was in place back in 1998, and that he had business dealings with Fidel Castro and his Cuba government when it was at a time when it was illegal to do so. Now we're living in a different era now, where your relations with Cuba have stabilized and improved, and all of that, and this is back in 1998. So I want to get your thoughts on it. How big do you think this is? How much do you think the voting the voting public is going to care about this?
I don't know. I mean, he insulted a Gold Star family, insulted a POW.
Yeah. I
mean, and they didn't care then. So him trying to spend $68,000 in '98 in Cuba, that's going to be waters off the duck's back.
Yeah, an interesting thing, and I meant to send this to you, and I forgot. Trump was giving at a rally, or giving a speech, or making an appearance, something along those lines. I believe it was one day this week, and I'm pretty sure it was after the debate. Wherever it was, and I'll have to look it up, and we'll tweet this out. Wherever it was that he asked the audience to self-identify whether or not they were a conservative Christian. And then he changed his tune and said, "No, wait, tell me if you're not a conservative Christian." And apparently some people raised their hands. And he said, "Should we keep them? Should we allow them to stay in here? I guess we'll allow them to stay in here." What do you make of all of that?
That is bullshit. I mean, hey, can all the undesirables please identify themselves so I can probably make fun of them, or
something, right?
Maybe just point them out so my supporters can deal with you in uncomforting ways. I mean, that's horse shit.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, there are some articles out there by a few. I don't know the number. We might have to try to gather that. But by some women who, by virtue of their job, have had to cover the Donald Trump campaign and what it means to be a woman. And Katie Turn, I believe is her name, at NBC. Was one of the first early on to come out and talk about some of the things that she had experienced, and she's not the only one. She's just a name that came to my mind, and there have been other, brave women who've come forward to talk about what, the treatment that they have experienced, and there has been so much censorship from that campaign regarding the media, and it's pretty amazing that it's been allowed to. I mean, what do you do, right? But I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Well, and then it's like, hey, it's like he needs the media so he can, get his freaking bullshit message out there and to fuel whatever xenophobic shit in people's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And then, they're allowed in, and he's like, oh, there they are. There's the disgusting, crooked media writing lies about me. And when I'm elected, I'm going to open up all these libel laws so I can punish them. It's like, oh, you're gonna destroy the First Amendment. Cool. It's great. It's great that you guys are voting for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a statement that was made that was particularly troubling, but I can't remember now what it was. Yeah, I think that.
And it's like if you think, oh, well, duh, just obviously say to appease him. It's like if he can take away your First Amendment, he's going to take away your Second. And that
he doesn't care. I mean, it's all
that is right next to the Ten Commandments with supporters like that.
It's all about what's convenient. It's interesting because you're just going back to this Cuba thing, and now, of course, it was in 1998, and his campaign spokesperson has come out and said that it was several years ago and whatever, and she made the comment that we're not allowed to talk about the Clintons' past history, and that sort of reminded me as I was looking at the narrative surrounding this Cuba thing. It reminded me of that whole Trump being so proud of himself that he didn't mention Bill Clinton's infidelities.
That has nothing to do with
alleged infidelities, and I don't have any doubt but that he cheated on her. I think we have.
Oh yeah, I mean he admitted the inappropriate affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah. But there are a couple of things here. First of all, Donald Trump hasn't been faithful to any woman ever. I mean, he's cheated on every wife that he's ever had. I forget, he's on his fourth. Is he? I don't know how many times he's been married. But a lot. And as you mentioned, how she's responsible for what Bill does is another thing. And listen, I know we want to act like our marriages are supposed to be perfect, and we're all perfect little Puritans, and we don't do anything wrong and whatever. But there's a lot of sex going on in this country, okay?
Oh yeah.
And it's not just taking place in the White House. It's taking place in the factories, in the restaurants. I mean, there's a relatively high divorce rate for a reason, and it's because monogamy is hard and people like to get down. And so, I mean, I know that we don't like to have these honest conversations with each other about these things, but it's true. And I'm certainly not excusing some of the more, the bad aspects of some of the things that Bill Clinton has been alleged to have done, and all of that. But to be proud of yourself that you didn't bring up her husband's track record with women when you're a disgusting scum of a human being whose faithfulness is not even remotely in doubt. I mean, we know that you're not.
And then it's like he's trying to send this message of like, hey, she couldn't control her husband. How can she control this country? I'm like, I don't know. You cheated on every single one of your wives. I mean, how can you fuck this country over if you're trying to fuck the others?
Well, or how can we expect you to be faithful to this country when you've never been faithful to anything? And really Giuliani tried to do the same thing and said she said that she wasn't competent to lead the country because of Bill Clinton. And, of course, he has his own bad track record with being faithful, and I think he married a cousin, which is kind of funny. But here's the thing that I said on Wednesday, and then we'll try and wrap things up. I'll let you comment on this, and we'll try and wrap things up, because the 30 minutes always goes fast. But, if she had divorced Bill, let's just, hypothetically speaking, if she had divorced Bill, first of all, it probably would have put her economically disadvantaged, although, she did have her own career and what have you. I mean, together, not having to go through that divorce. It made their earning capacity a little bit better. And I have no doubt she probably would have been fine. But then the narrative would have been, well, she couldn't even make her
Yeah.
unsuccessful marriage. She couldn't make her marriage work. How could she be successful running this country? That's
Hmm.
what the narrative would be.
Oh yeah, it's like, hey, she left her husband and all this stuff. Because I mean, think about it. I mean, like that came out in 97, 98 with Monica Lewinsky.
Somewhere around there.
So let's say that. So I mean, so let's say it comes out. He tells her in private. Let's just say he tells her in private. Yeah, this happened. Whatever. So she starts the motions of
Mhm.
getting the hell out of there. They divorce while he's still president, mind you, right?
Mhm.
And who knows how the hell that situation works? Is there fucking precedent for that?
I
Uh,
mean,
you know, and then, um, and then you can sit there, and then you got like 2 years of Clinton in the White House, probably getting 9 million, criticisms because he's divorced now. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and then and then it comes down to right now where she's running for president as herself, and then she'll be like, "Oh, if you left him, those last 2 years, this country was in shit because he was so heartbroken or whatever.
yeah.
His
I mean,
mind is
Oh,
on
yeah,
divorce,
yeah,
you know."
yeah. I mean, there's so much that could have. Yeah,
And-
yeah. It's interesting. I'll have to try to find a link. I read a book. This has been, Lord, this has probably been maybe 10 years ago. It's been a pretty good while. Was it called All the President's Mistresses? Might have been the title of the book. But anyway, it was basically talking about, I think there's only one president in our nation's history that the author was unable to identify that this person had a mission. It may have been the guy who's never married.
yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna say it had.
Yeah,
If it was anybody, it was Buchanan.
yeah. So I mean, it's like, and I try not to get involved in people's private affairs, right? For it's none of my business, and what makes a successful relationship is often personal to the two people, generally speaking, two people involved in the relationship. And so who am I to judge? And as long as what's going on is going on between consenting adults without foul play or whatever, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with it, so I don't try to get involved in all of that and make value judgments about it.
Yeah.
So. Matt, it's always fun. I enjoyed it. We'll have a whole lot more to talk about after the next series of events. We might not talk politics next week. We might have to turn our attention back to technology and whatever. I'll see what I can come up with.
Okay.
All right, tell everybody out there where they can find you.
Find me at Twitter at Woodstock. That's W00DSTOK.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, night.
Bye.
All right, welcome back. Thanks again for listening to Bat Talk with Sharona, our Saturday morning edition. It's always so fun to sit down with Matt and talk about whatever we're talking about. We've talked a lot about politics. We've talked about technology. I think we will talk technology next week because I definitely want to touch upon the Yahoo data breach and situation there. It looks like it's far more serious than Yahoo first admitted, and its CEO, its woman, female CEO, is under fire right now, and so we'll see how that story develops. That's an interesting one. And speaking of technology, I did find the article talking about the op-ed that was written for the Wall Street Journal, which I didn't even know it was for the Wall Street Journal. Newspapers and media have undergone a rather dramatic change, and change is still ongoing. I had put on the notes that we should talk about all the layoffs and what have you. We're seeing a dramatic shift. So this is kind of a good way, I suppose, to segue into that. But it was, it's interesting that this was actually in the Wall Street Journal, and it was brought to my attention this past week that a University of Tennessee law professor who writes some op-ed pieces and who is a major douchebag to boot, it was encouraging motorists to run over protesters. And it just, we live in interesting times. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but sometimes you're happy to leave some people behind. But this one in particular was pretty interesting. The author of the piece, and it's interesting because I do think that probably he had the best intentions with this. But this is why it's so important to have conversations and not to stick to sports, right? Because I do think that this guy had the best of intentions, but probably learned a lot from the backlash that he experienced. Anyway, he wrote this for the Wall Street Journal, and basically the gist of it is, we tweeted that out a few minutes ago. The gist of it is that women should pretend to be men in order to get jobs, because we do know that this isn't a debate. This is an established fact that there is a lot of sexism and a lack of opportunity for women in technology. And so in an effort to correct that, this solution was offered. Not let's fix the problem, but let's ignore the problem exists, and ladies, just act like you're men, and you pretend to be men and fool these people in power who make these decisions, fool them into hiring you. And I haven't read the whole thing. I'm sure that the people who make these decisions would just love to be fooled in that manner, and to be thinking that they've hired this great guy to work for them, and they've got this hormonal baby bearing person instead. And there are a lot of reasons why the deck gets stacked against women in a lot of different professions. And that discussion is way beyond the scope of this show, because we only have 10 more minutes left, and then we're going to turn our attention to sports and get Jennifer Eakins on the show. But it's an interesting discussion, and it was interesting to see that there were not just women who blew back against this op-ed piece, but there were men as well. And it's always important to have allies, and I think that we are seeing a dramatic change in how men do perceive a lot of these issues. And social media has really had an impact on that. Social media has given a voice to so many groups that have traditionally been disenfranchised. And hopefully we'll continue to see more change. But that was an interesting one. I wanted to share that with you guys and talk about that. Before we get too far away from politics, I have to talk about the Gary Johnson question. Gary Johnson running as a libertarian. A lot of people think that he's basically a Democrat in libertarian disguise. I don't know. The Libertarian Party, like a lot of groups with some diverse aspects to it, does have a wide range of ideas and people associated with it. It's always pretty. And I've actually once voted for a libertarian. Um, but I digress. But the Gary Johnson question is interesting to me because if you sit down and listen to him and listen to him talk, he's not that far off from Donald Trump and being utterly unqualified to be president of this country. He could not name any major world leader, and yet he was able to pick up endorsement by the Chicago Tribune. And I don't live in Chicago. I visited Chicago. It's a wonderful city. I love visiting there. I know that it's having a lot of issues right now. The murder rate there is pretty high. There are a lot of reasons for that. Maybe we'll talk about that on a show soon. But so I wasn't all that familiar with the Chicago Tribune, so I did a little research this morning, and uh, it was funny to me. Lo and behold, that is the newspaper that published the headline that incorrectly credited Dewey with the win over Harry Truman, and they've also had they had to defend itself against claims of plagiarism. It's got an interesting history. It's unquestionably done some things that are good. A lot of Pulitzers associated with it, even though it largely just you know held itself away from that award. But one of the things that struck me was how cozy it was with the Nixon administration. Yet it did come out, was I think the first newspaper to actually come out and ask for him to resign. So, it's done some good things, but it's interesting that this newspaper endorsed Gary Johnson, calling him the most principled candidate. And it to me, it ties into the whole, the woman can be the most qualified candidate, and there's no question but that Hillary Clinton is the most qualified candidate among all of them. That's whether you like her or not. That's a fact. But yet, the guy who can't name any major world leader gets a newspaper endorsement. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of funny to me. But it's an interesting time in newspaper and media too. I read a very sad article this morning. I tweeted it out. The end of Mental Floss, the magazine. It was a wonderful article by one of the editors there, and talking about what the magazine meant, and why it's no longer going to be in print. And I am the world's, listen, I am very much committed to saving money. Okay, I'll go ahead and say it. I'm probably cheap, and I don't like paying for things if I can get away with it. And I've been very resistant to paying for news, to paying for media. I didn't like paywalls when they first came up, and but I think that at some point you've got to realize that, and there are a lot of reasons why. There's a changing landscape in newspapers and media, and a lot of them are owned by people who should not own them, but yet here we are. We're just, as a country, if we want to get a truly independent media, we're going to have to start paying for it. I think that's the bottom line, and I've been very resistant to that too. The problem with that is identifying the what is quality enough to make me pay for it. And it's hard because you do have these traditionally good publications that are, and we've talked about this before, the John Oliver Rat Cat, right? That have undergone ownership changes, and they're producing content that I don't want to pay for. I want to pay for the think. Unfortunately, we're coming to a point in time where if you want to get the good stuff, you're going to have to pay for the bad stuff too, and it just makes me sad. It makes me sad that's where we are. I don't know what the solution is, except maybe to encourage those who have our country's best interests at heart and who have the wherewithal and the money to do it, to purchase these publications and save us all. Because an independent media, a media that is able to devote time and resources to covering your local elections, to covering your local politicians, because that's where it starts. That's how you get accountability, is by covering these things. That's important. That's vital. And the resources are going away. They're not there, and it's sad that's where we are. All right, so that's it for the the non-sports portion of the show. It's interesting. We're getting ready to take another quick break here in about 5 minutes. We'll be joined by Jennifer Eakins, who writes for 4 Football. We'll talk about college sports, college football, get you guys an update on what's going on with the Denver Broncos, and talk some fantasy football. We'll talk about the sad news about Sammy Watkins and some other injuries that both of our teams and everybody else is experiencing in playing fantasy football this year. But a topic that I'm going to put on the upcoming list to discuss is how, and this has been going on as long, really, since the internet age. I can remember this discussion going on when the Titans drafted Vince Young, and when he was so good at the University of Texas, and how we anoint these young guys, these young quarterbacks coming out of college, fantastic college careers, and they come into the NFL and they see success early because they're new and they're different, and these professional defensive coordinators don't yet have them figured out, right? But they come into the league and they start playing, and you have college tape, but it's still a different thing. And so that a lot of times they have fantastic first years starting, whether they're a rookie or just a first year starter. And Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, Robert Griffin III. I mean, there's so many names that we can throw out for this. And Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota last year. I don't know why we keep getting this big shot look on our face, except that we keep getting these articles that anoint these young quarterbacks, and it sets them up for failure, because in large part, we're completely and utterly unprepared for the struggles that are going to follow. They're going to struggle at some point, and a lot of times it's in their second season, and then because we set them up for these high expectations without regard for the fact that they're going to have these struggles, when they do enter the struggle years, they start to get labeled a bust. And it's really unfortunate because of how the CBA makes it um, so easy, and it's understandable that teams will want to play these guys earlier and earlier because the contracts are shorter. They have to make decisions about option years and all of that. But it's become, and it's not just at quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but because quarterback is such a glamorous and it's a position that people really pay attention to. You can talk about this in offensive line play as well. And we give a lot of love to offensive lines because we love the guys who play in the trenches. But it's a discussion that you can have in a lot of positions. But it's particularly, I think, egregious when it comes to these young quarterbacks. And we're seeing it with Marcus Mariota. You have to be patient, and you have to give these guys the opportunity to have these growing pains. They're going to struggle, and that's just part of it. And hopefully they get past those struggles and learn from them, and they're better. But it's going to happen, and we just have to be a lot more patient about it. And unfortunately, we're not. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. when we come back, more sports talk. We'll get Jennifer Eakin in here and talk some Denver Broncos and the big match between. I just noticed Nick Chubb is out. That's good news for the Tennessee Volunteers. Anyway, so stay tuned in. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. As always, I thank you for tuning in. We're going to turn our attention to sports, and we're going to talk about some college football. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos. We're going to get Jennifer Eakin in here in just a minute and have that discussion with her. It's interesting. If you play fantasy football, like I do. I've got 10 teams. Some of them are best ball, but injuries are such a part of the game anymore, and it really does. Fantasy football is kind of luck oriented anyway, but if you have a lot of injuries, it can totally change the complexion of your teams. And I mentioned Sammy Watkins. The question on whether to hold on to him or not is pretty interesting. I made the decision because in this particular league that I'm playing in, we have very small benches. I have a lot of injuries: Des Bryant, Tevin Coleman, Delaney Walker. I just went ahead and cut ties. So we'll get Jennifer's thoughts on that. We're joined now by Jennifer Eakin. Jen, it's so great to have you on.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Happy Saturday. Wake up, girl.
I'm up. Totally up.
Well, we're going to start with the big game. And believe me, Jennifer, I gave your team a lot of sympathy because, I know how hard it is when you move away from a coach that you've had for a long time, like Georgia did with Mark Richt. And, and Tennessee saw that too. You have to do you think that Georgia made the right decision with their new coaching hire?
I think it's too early to tell. Georgia's the type of team, and you know how it is in the South. They'll always kind of go back to what they know, and, Kirby Smart, went to Georgia, and so I think I don't hate the hire. I just, it's just too early, really. And the team, it's just, it's early, and, we have a very, very young quarterback. I'm glad at least that he finally made the decision to go with him. The whole, putting in Lambert at times and Eason I'm just not a fan of. I'm actually just not a fan of Lambert in general. So I'm glad he kind of decided to stick with one and see what they have. It's too early. I was sad about Rick. I understood why, that Georgia really they under-delivered for a lot of years. And I understand, but I think, as I've come on and talked to you about it before, I was just upset because, I remember what it was like before Rick, and I think a lot of people don't. So they were all, get rid of him. And I'm like, they were really bad before he came. So, it's too early to tell. We'll have to kind of see how it goes.
Yeah. It's hard for fans to be patient, and I put myself in that category because I think Jennifer and I have talked about this before. Listen, and I can't remember. I think this was maybe Butch Jones's first year as the head coach for Tennessee, and of course the Vols made some terrible coaching hires when they moved on from Philip Fulmer, and that kind of set them back. But it's hard to. I've actually banned myself from tweeting about college football and tweeting about the Vols because, I just was too much. But I'm back now and tweeting about it now because I've learned to have some patience. As you get older, I think you develop a little bit more patience. But it's hard to have patience when you are used to that success, and fans do get spoiled.
Oh, for sure. I just tweeted out a little while ago. I put out my I put out my Georgia flag this morning, and I almost didn't. It's because I take it out every Saturday morning, and I pull it back in. And this morning I'm like, am I going to put it out there? And I was like, no, I am. I have to. I've already kind of resigned this season. I just don't think, I think this is a season to kind of get our quarterback comfortable, and obviously get Chubb healthy and kind of, I just don't, as long as I'm prepared for it and know that, they're not going anywhere this season. They're not, they're not coming out of the SEC East, that's for sure. So, it'll be a growing year, and then hopefully there's always next year.
Always next year. The mantra of every fan of every sports team ever.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, by the way, that game starts at 2:30. Your all-world running back is out. That's bad news for Georgia. But you never know what kind of team you're going to get with the Vols. They start out very, very, very slow, and sometimes they really pick it up in the second half. Sometimes not. I don't think this is a gimme win by any means, and it's. I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I think it just depends, on who shows up. Really, on both sides. I mean, Georgia's kind of been, up and down. I mean, like that first game against North Carolina was great, and then last week against Ole Miss, it was just a totally different, It just depends on who shows up. I'm, mentally, I'm prepared, for a loss. If they happen to win, that would be great. But, like with Chubb out, Sonny Michel is a good running back. He's not, chump change, but at the same time, the offensive line is awful. The defense is pretty bad. I don't really see anything good happening today, but it'll be fun, and I will be watching.
Well, that's always the important thing. You have to go through the good and the bad. Well, fortunately for you, the Denver Broncos, your professional team, wow, they're doing so well. And I have to tell you, I was very iffy about the Trevor Siemian thing, and you and I talked about that, and but I've bought in. I picked him up in a couple of fantasy football leagues this past week, and I'm playing him this week in DFS.
Wow. That's that's interesting. I am not, but it's funny. Right before I was on here, I was on a little Twitter conversation. I can't remember who it was with right now, but people are apparently dropping Russell Wilson for Trevor Siemian. Yeah, I can't even. I don't even know what to say about that. And I'm a Bronco homer, and I still can't even fathom that people are doing that. I think
Russell Wilson's dinged up. He's not having a. Last year it was like
dropping him outright for. Yeah,
I know, right?
I don't know. No, I mean I'm debating. I actually have Russell Wilson in my my fishbowl team, and as of right now he's not in my lineup. I mean. They announced that he is playing, so I'll wait and see. I may switch him in. But as far as Simeon goes, yeah, it's very, very interesting. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think he's due for a bad game at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it's
Absolutely.
not. I hope it's not this weekend, but he's definitely going to have a game where he throws a couple picks and just can't. I just think when teams they're starting to have film on him, they're going to figure him out a little bit. I'm thinking the beginning might just be a little bit of not luck, but just. They don't really know much about him, and he's performed well. It'll definitely be interesting to see, how it goes. And it's interesting that they've played three, difficult teams. I mean, it's not like they've come out with, he's beaten three teams that were playoff teams. So I think it's interesting, and it's exciting around here, that's for sure. But like I said, I'm personally cautiously optimistic. I know there's going to be a dog game coming from him at some point, but the defense, they really just don't need that much from him, and that's the same model of what happened last year, where he just kind of needs to be serviceable, and this defense, believe it or not, is better than last year's, I think. So I think that if they can just kind of stay the course and not sustain too many injuries along the way, they could end up back where they were last year.
I just now noticed, I guess, that the Broncos are this year's AFC West team for the AFC South because they play the Jaguars and the Titans. They play the Raiders, They've got the Chargers coming up twice, and the Patriots. It's an interesting schedule. I think they're going to beat the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay really struggling right now. Jameis Winston seeing that second-year struggle that Marcus Mariota is seeing. And, you mentioned Trevor Siemian. Yeah, you've got to give these young quarterbacks an opportunity to grow. And then they are going to struggle. We don't have much patience, it seems like, anymore. But I think they're going to beat Tampa Bay. The Falcons, I I think they'll beat the Falcons too. The Chargers have been better this year than I expected.
For sure, and they haven't even
yeah.
started their division games yet. I mean, they have to
Yeah.
play the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders twice. All three of them, and it's not, division games are never gimme, So,
Yeah.
and they haven't even started that run yet.
And
So
the
it'll
Chiefs are
definitely
good.
be. Yeah, I mean, all three of those teams are definitely capable of beating the Broncos on any day. So, it just kind of depends. I mean, the poor Chargers, the injuries are just, it's kind of comical. I mean, they just keep coming, and so hopefully they can hang on to, Melvin Gordon and a couple, I don't know. It's been kind of rough for the Chargers, but you can never count them out. Rivers is just, I have Rivers all over the place in fantasy.
Do you?
I have him. Well, yeah, I have him in like almost every MFL. I have him, I think I have him maybe on both my actual redraft teams. He just, he makes bad decisions and he'll throw some picks, but he always ends up with garbage numbers at the end. He just does,
Yeah, he's a really good option in fantasy. I agree. I was like, I almost played him in DFS this week. It was interesting.
I think I do have him in one.
Yeah, it was interesting to look at the options and the numbers and what have you. And I intend to do one more DFS. I'm going to try DraftKings, which I have not tried yet. I've been doing all of mine on FanDuel. But anyway, injuries always change the complexion of things, and I was talking about that in the first hour. When you look at the Steelers, I thought the Steelers were going to be really, really good this year and win their division, and I still think that they can. But man, they've just been hit, by so many injuries. Although they do get a boost with Le'Veon Bell, and as a Le'Veon Bell fantasy owner, wow, I'm so excited to have him back.
It's funny. I actually have him too, but I also have D'Angelo Williams on that same team. So I'm kind of like, like I've been. It's actually the one that I'm in with you, the law one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have. So D'Angelo Williams has been fantastic, and now I'm like, I have to pull him for Bell. I'm a little bit I'm a little weary. I don't know. I want to see. Hopefully Bell is as healthy as we all think he is, and I hope he's ready to go. But yeah, it's interesting because I actually have a lot of Ben Roethlisberger as well, and so in my MFLs, my quarterbacks on most of my teams are Roethlisberger and Rivers, and so last week was kind of rough because Roethlisberger was just a bad week. Pittsburgh scored 3 points, and I ended up on the bottom in most of my MFLs because of that.
I had Carson Palmer. That was, and I think one of the leagues where I picked up Trevor Siemian, I think I dropped Carson Palmer because I was like, you need to get out of here.
I know it's hard. I'm in a league where I have Palmer I drafted him as my starter, and then I ended up getting Rivers later and now I've just been playing Rivers so far this season. I'm just, but Carson's been riding the bench, and it's kind of crazy because it wasn't, I didn't draft with that intention, but somehow just based on the way it's going, I don't know what's up with Palmer. I don't know if people, I've been hearing a lot about, old age, this is it. Like, he caught up and he's done. I just don't know. It'll be interesting.
He had an injury at the end of last year. Was it a thumb or anyway?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
He's got an injury, and I think that's affecting him. And and old man time is undefeated, and it's hard. The Sammy Watkins news was big yesterday, although it's really not much of a surprise if you have him, if you own him in fantasy. He's been kind of struggling, and I have him in one league where we have a really short bench. I think there's like room for 4 players, and I've got Des Bryant and Tevin Coleman and Delaney Walker, who are all questionable and injured, and so I just wasn't able to hang on to him. How do you feel about hanging on to Sammy Watkins?
It's interesting. I'm pretty anti-Sammy Watkins, so I actually do not have him anywhere this season, so I'm okay with his injury. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it just sounds like he's done. I know that they say 8 weeks or whatever. I wouldn't hang on to him. I guess it depends, like you said. It depends on the depth of your bench. If you really have a pretty deep bench and you can kind of stash him, or if you have an IR spot. But if you only have a couple bench spots, you just 8 weeks is just too long.
You can't.
And even when he comes back, it's like that team is kind of a mess anyway. So I don't know. It's not like he's just going to all of a sudden come back after 8 weeks and be this stud. It's just I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I completely
and
agree.
it's sad because Tyrod, I actually have him in a few places
Yeah.
because he was supposed to have this excellent year, and it's like
He's still a pretty
I think he
good
did
fantasy.
okay last week. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still a pretty good fantasy option. He had a bad week 1, and so I was like, I'm sitting you. And then of course he blew up in week 2 on that Thursday night game that nobody
Yep.
expected. So I was like, okay, I'm an idiot. Just and this is the thing about marquee players that's hard. They're gonna have bad games, but if you buy into somebody, you have to be patient and play them, and so that's kind of the struggle with Sammy Watkins, because he is a marquee player, and I don't believe in moving away from your marquee guys early, but I agree, you can't hold a guy that long.
No, it's interesting that you're mentioning patience again, because it's like, I guess that's kind of the theme of the day. I guess when you think about it, it's like football in general, like it requires patience, and I think fans and fantasy players just don't have a lot of it.
No.
It's interesting when you talk about even for college football, fantasy, regular NFL, all of it. It's like patience is needed, but it's really a tough thing. I mean, fantasy, it's tough for patience. People are, the whole recency bias. People are they want results now, and if they don't get it, goodbye, on to the next guy.
Yeah. How do you feel about the Texans' offense? Brock Osweiler is struggling down there. Now they've lost J.J. Watt. I think Osweiler came out this week and said that the criticism is ridiculous. You had an up close and personal look at him. What do you make of his struggles with the Texans?
I think what's happening is exactly what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a ton of experience. I mean, he came in for a few games last year, but really, he sat behind Peyton and just kind of learned. Excuse me. For 5 years, and so I think it's he's going to struggle like any new quarterback. I mean, he has he has talent. I mean, he's huge and he has a good arm. It's just it's going to take time. And he's. I think exactly what's happening, is happening. He's, there's some spurts of, he has some decent plays, and then he makes some bad decisions. And I think that's going to happen with a guy that doesn't have, the experience. And I think, excuse me, I think that, I wouldn't like, like we all said, I think we just need to be patient with him as well. I think that people were so quick to be like, oh, he sucks. I mean, personally, I don't think he was worth the money he was given. I mean, that's for sure. But at the same time, I think he deserves, a chance to kind of see what he has. And, based on quarterbacks are not growing on trees, these days. And the talent pool seems to be getting smaller and smaller. So, I think they should kind of, just see what they have with him. And, I mean, I think he deserves to be a starter for now, and then I guess we'll just see what happens. But, you and I talked about this, I think, last year, that even in college, the talent is not what it used to be for quarterbacks. And it just seems like, I don't know, maybe it was just a different time, but it just seems like when we were growing up watching football, there were so many amazing, starting quarterbacks and marquee franchise guys, and now it's just kind of, there's maybe one per year, that you can kind of hang your hat on. And then there's the surprises like Wentz, and, it's kind of crazy when you see that. I mean, apparently in Philadelphia, he's the next, he's the Messiah come back there. They have, like, I've seen these reports of just they're sold out of jerseys, and there's this huge Wentz fever happening there. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and when the struggles hit, it's going to, it's so sad to watch these, and I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he's going to have a lot of success in the league. But I think so often we set them up for failure by anointing them. I talked about that in the first hour of the show, and that doesn't give them much opportunity to have those struggles, and you saw it with RG3 and Colin Kaepernick, and even to a certain extent Russell Wilson, even though he's still having success, and there are going to be those guys who do continue to have that kind of success. Ryan Tannehill is a guy that also comes to mind, and I feel and I know that he's really not been very good, and the Thursday night game was particularly dreadful. But when you look at, and these colleges, listen, college football has become $1 billion business on its own, and it's separate and apart from the NFL anymore, where it used to be like it was kind of a developmental league. It's just not that anymore, and they're not preparing these guys to come into the league. There's more and more evidence of that. Offensive line play, quarterback, defensive back, these guys aren't being taught technique. They don't know how to track. They don't know how to move their legs and their hips anymore. And it's because it's its own business now, and it's been moving that way for a long time. But the thing about Ryan Tannehill is that he was overdrafted. You're taken in the first round. It was a bad quarterback class. I understand that, but you have a guy who really only played 1 year as quarterback
Mhm.
in college, and he's just now getting to the point where he's got the experience that your typical quarterback does coming into the league.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's the same thing with Brock. I mean, it wasn't like he was a
Yeah.
3-year starter at Arizona State. I mean, he only played, I don't even think it was a full season, So it's kind of a similar, now that you point that out, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, he's kind of catching up to other guys that have, more snaps. I mean, a lot more snaps.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I feel so, and I know that there's, he got his extension and blah blah blah, but I still feel badly for him because he's not really had the opportunity to have that growth. And you look at the Texans roster. Behind Brock Osweiler is Tom Savage and Brandon Whedon. So
Right.
you would think that they'll be patient with, and I think Bill O'Brien is a patient guy, but you'll think that they'll be patient with Brock Osweiler and give him, that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Back to the Bell Williams thing,
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin came out and said they're going to give Le'Veon Bell all the work that he can handle and probably then some. So the D'Angelo Williams question is interesting to me. I love the guy. I think he's great and all of that. But if I owned him, and I don't, if I owned him, I just wouldn't feel at all confident about starting him.
Yeah, no, he's on my bench for this week, but I'm certainly not going to drop him because until
No,
I
no,
know
no,
that
no, no. I
Le'Veon
wouldn't drop
is
him at
good to
all.
go.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I have him, but yeah, I wouldn't feel. I mean, I think he's going to get out there. I think I read somewhere that Tomlin had said, that they may even line up Bell as a receiver, in certain
Oh, they
packages.
will.
So
I own Eli
I
Rogers
think
everywhere, and I'm crying because oh my God.
I have Whedon. I have Whedon in a couple places, and I'm like, ugh. I don't think I've played him yet this season, and I don't think I'm going to even today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think I think D'Angelo will definitely get.
Yeah.
He may be good for 5 to 7 fantasy points. I don't think he's going to do anything wonderful, but you never know. I mean, he may bust one. That's the thing. If he gets a small opportunity and then busts one out, oh well. I guess we'll have to see. I'm interested to see how Pittsburgh, just kind of goes moving forward. The rest of the season, because like you said, they, everyone kind of touted them as Super Bowl favorites, or at least coming out of the AFC, and we haven't seen much yet, and I don't know if Ben, Ben is kind of one of those, kind of like Palmer, he's getting
up and down
injuries,
guys.
He was hurt last year, the whole year, and he played. Remember that one, game? He had to come out and play because Landry Jones got hurt, and so.
Yeah, reminded me of Steve McNair.
I mean,
yeah,
and I mean, Roethlisberger is as tough as they come. I mean, he gets out there when he's hurt, but there's only so much you can really do. So it'll kind of be interesting.
Yeah, it will. I want to ask you about the Baltimore Ravens backfield, and then we'll talk about other guys that you like this week and other guys that you're sitting this week. But the Ravens backfield, and I ask you this because it's killing me in one of my leagues. I love Justin Forsett, and he's still getting the majority of the attention. But in this particular league, it's a modified PPR. In this particular league, and I had Justin Forsett and Terrence West. Terrence West has scored more points, and I had to make a move. I forget why. I had to pick up somebody, maybe because Delaney Walker's injured. And so I was just like, I'm moving on. I've got to get rid of Justin Forsett. But I held on to Terrence West for that reason, even though that backfield is a mess.
It really is. I actually, luckily, I stayed away from that backfield and everything just because I knew, going in, and it's such a struggle because you've got Kenneth Dixon that he's coming back and he's supposed to get most of the targets at some point and the rep. It's just it's tough because you've got, like you said, Forsett was supposed to be the starter, but at the same time there's just not. I think they spread it around too much to really have. I don't think you could play the game all season of which one, and you're going to always, you're going to get the wrong one. And so, my advice is just to stay away from it completely, especially like in DFS.
Yeah.
I would never, do any of those guys.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I just, until someone emerges, I think it's going to be, it'll always be a committee.
Yeah.
To see, and it's the Ravens are just a weird team. I mean, I'm not, like, even their wideouts, it's the same thing. You don't really have.
I stayed away from their wideouts. Yeah.
I mean, I actually have Flacco in the fishbowl, and he's been great, and I've done, even in DFS, I've done naked Flacco a couple times because I don't trust anybody else. I don't know where it's going, but somehow he gets the points. I don't care who they go to. I just kind of play him because it's just an odd team. I mean, Pitta obviously has emerged as, he has, excuse me, I was doing my, I do my tight end streaming piece weekly for 4for4, and so in doing research, I discovered that Pitta actually has more targets than any of the wideouts. So he is, at the moment, at least going into this week, he's the most targeted Raven. So I mean, I guess he's safe to play, but even with Wallace and Perryman, it's Steve Smith, you just don't know,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. Oh, I've just realized I have Sammy Watkins in our League of Laws, so I'm going to have to make a move there. Fortunately, I'm pretty good in that league, and we've got a deep bench, and I'm pretty well set up. I'm actually starting.
Yeah, I'm 0-3. 0-3 in that league, and I'm 9 points behind the person in first place, and I'm in last place at 0-3.
That's crazy.
Talk about a bad bounce. Yeah.
Zach beat me in week 1. Yeah, Zach beat me in week 1, and I was second in the league in point scoring. I'm actually playing Dak Prescott in that league. He was a guy that I picked up simply because I wanted one share, and I was like, well, but I'm going to pick up because I think I've got Carson Palmer and as my main quarterback. And like later on, I was like, let me pick up Alex Smith again because we do have such a deep bench. Let me pick up Alex Smith just in case this is a really bad decision. You know what? I may end up moving away from Carson in this league and picking up some other guys. I just realized that I've got Devin Funchess. I'm so happy that I didn't buy completely into the Devin Funchess hype. I think this is the only. I might maybe have him in 2 different leagues because he really hasn't been anything this year.
No, he hasn't. In that league it's interesting. I have Eli Manning and Derek Carr, and that's kind of like it's an every week struggle of which one. I mean, they're both decent, and they both they both put up numbers, and so far I've actually picked correctly. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm 0-3, but I've still picked correctly as far as the points. I have to get a win at some point. It's to be in second place in overall points and then be 0-3 in actual last place is just
crazy.
It's not a fun place to be. So
no,
I actually played Jen this week. And hopefully she's not listening to this. But at the moment, she has like 3 guys in on a bye. She hasn't touched her team yet, so I'm sure she'll get there. But at the moment, she hasn't. So I'm sure
I played her last week.
Point.
We had a very close game. Jen's so great. I felt bad felt bad about beating her. I want to ask you about the Jaguars and the Colts, because they were kind of a popular streaming thing this week, especially the Colts D. I was like, not pass. And as it turns out, one of their best cornerbacks is going to be out for this game. So I'm glad that I did. But, both these teams are bad. They're playing in London. Everybody thinks it's going to be a shootout, and I'm just not convinced. I'm like, I have Philip Dorsett. I'm probably going to play him. But and TJ Yeldon, I'm just not sure. Well, how do you feel about these 2 offenses?
I think it's one of those games that could go. It's going to be one extreme or the other. Like I think it's either going to be a shootout or like no one's going to be able to do anything because they're just kind of inept this year, and it'll just kind of be like 3-6 or something. But I don't know. It's strange because every year with the Jaguars, it's like we keep waiting for this big. The Jaguars are supposed to be really good every year. They won free agency. They're going to be and then somehow they're not, and it's like it's just odd because they have the talent.
Very
odd. It just doesn't translate, and they got a bunch of really good players this offseason. They got a bunch of Bronco players from the Super Bowl team, and they're still somehow not able to put it together. I
guess Bradley's
not
going to
watched
get fired. Guess Bradley's going to get fired. It's just a question of when.
Right, because you look at the talent and you're like, how are they not successful? But somehow they're not. And like I was about to say, I admittedly haven't watched I can't speak this morning. I haven't watched them very much this season, so I don't know exactly what's going on. But at the same time, it's baffling. I have some Allen Robinson, and kind of.
Well, you play him. He's kind of marquee. Yeah, he's the kind of marquee guy you're going to play every week.
Of course,
absolutely.
But it's frustrating when he doesn't. When he.
I have Kelvin Benjamin. Kelvin Benjamin gave me no points last week. 0 points last week.
Yeah, that happened to my husband last week, and he was not happy. That's tough. I don't know what's up with that because, he will. I think it's just, I don't know. That team has kind of been interesting as well. The Panthers are not the Panthers of last year, at least not yet.
I just realized I have Dwayne Allen. I have, let's see, 3 tight ends in our League of Laws league. I have Dwayne Allen is in my lineup right now simply because Delaney Walker was out last week and he's questionable. He'll be a game-time decision. I'll monitor that. But a guy I want to ask you about, because I picked him up in several leagues, is Tampa Bay's young tight end, Cameron Brate. How are you feeling about him?
I like Brate a lot, actually. He was on a streamer this week. Denver, doesn't. So the one weakness on their defense has been to the tight end position for some reason.
Yep.
And so that, that's kind of the only,
Which is odd. I guess it's odd because Denver has a good group of linebackers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what it is, but for some reason they give up, red zone, points to tight ends, and I'm not sure why. It's been like that for years, and I don't really, it's interesting. Even when the defense kind of switches, when the players switch, somehow they still end up not being able to defend that. But I like Brate. I coming into the season, I kind of had him higher just because I knew, the Austin Seferian-Jenkins thing just wasn't happening. He was fighting, he was fighting with Dirk, coach, during training camp. So I knew that wasn't going to go well, and so Brate is interesting. He's young and he can play, So I think this week,
and it looks like he and Jameis Winston have a good rapport.
Exactly, and I think that I can't remember exactly, and I'm not in front of a computer right now, but I know that I think they have a decent next couple weeks because I think in my piece I remember saying even if this week against Denver scares you, I think there's a couple more games coming up where he's a good fit. So grab him if you can. Kind of thing, I think maybe, him and Winston may have a good rapport as far as, the age and chemistry, and they just kind of, are making it happen. So
they have Panthers, 49ers, Raiders, Falcons, Bears, Chiefs, Seahawks, Chargers, Saints, Cowboys. They play the Saints twice, and we know the Saints defense is very giving.
Right, and the Falcons defense is pretty bad, and the Colts defense is, what was it? Oh, Raiders, you said. Yeah, Raiders are not great either there. So, I think he's a good pickup to get if you can kind of hang on to him. I don't have any of them. I have Delaney, in a few that it's frustrating. And I have Julius Thomas, who, I thought would be good with Bortles this year. Once again, there is, not much is happening there either.
Yeah.
And so I actually picked up, and I think I have him in the League of Law league there. I had Julius Thomas. So I think this week I picked up Jack Doyle. I think it's that league that, he's been a surprise. It was all about Dwayne Allen, heading into this. They're like, okay, no more Fleener. It's going to be all Allen. Great tight end. Here we go. And then somehow this Doyle guy shows up, and he's getting more targets at this point. So kind of weird. But I picked him up because I'm like, I guess, I don't know where he came from. I had never heard of him until, this year. But he's having success there, with Luck, and Luck, there's not a lot of success going on down there right now, but Doyle seems to be, they have a good rapport, I guess.
Yeah, it's I have Julia. I joined a league where you were only allowed to draft divisional players, and the AFC South sucks. Just I have Julius Thomas, and Andrew Luck. It just
Wait,
Chris
your whole
Ivory.
team has to come from the AFC South?
Yes, Chris Ivory killed me because he was a surprise. It had that mysterious illness or whatever. It was just crazy.
Right.
Who else
an
do you have?
interesting concept for a league.
Yeah, the AFC South is like way low in terms of points scored and
right.
and what have you. It's just an interesting division. Who else is on your streamers list? Who other guys do you like streaming this week?
This week I'm trying to remember who I had on there. I can go look, but I think that I know Rudolph has been kind of interesting. I hate to recommend Kyle Rudolph, but at the same time, every week I'm like, I don't want to put him on here, but then the numbers, indicate, he's a good, he seems to be showing up this week, and it's kind of strange.
I think that he's going to be a good option with Sam Bradford, and Sam Bradford seems to like him a lot, and he's looking for him a lot, and so he's a guy that I think he could be legit. I'm like you.
It's weird every year.
If you've had Kyle Rudolph, he's burned you so much that you're like,
for sure.
But I agree.
So I also have I have Zach Miller on there. I mean, he's got a great matchup with Detroit. And I mean the Bears are a mess. I mean, obviously, but somehow Hoyer and Miller together, are a good pair. I mean, Miller. I'm actually looking at my piece right now. But Miller is right now after 3 weeks. He's tight end number 4 in fantasy points, PPR, out of the whole league. So Zach Miller's a good one. I have Doyle, and then I had Brait, and then I also have the San Francisco, combo. You've got Vance McDonald, who struggled a little bit, but then there's also Garrett Selick, who actually is somehow getting more targets at this point. So, they have a good matchup, and they have a good, it's kind of if you really need someone, kind of thing. But I think, this week, it's weird. I saw a trend. I saw people starting to pick up Garrett Selick. Like, I thought I was crazy when I wrote the piece. I was like, people are going to think I'm nuts. But then I noticed people were picking him up, So I was like, oh, all right, I guess it's not just me. So those are basically my streamers for this week. I mean, I'm not really streaming because I have, I drafted kind of in a way that I don't have to. But I'm sure I'll end up with an injury and have to do it anyway. That's what happens.
How do you feel about the news, Josh Gordon news? Disappointing. I didn't own him anywhere because I was afraid this would happen. I think the Browns actually did release him, didn't they? He's entered rehab again.
They were talking about it, yeah.
Anyway, how do you feel about Andrew Hawkins?
I don't really have an opinion on Andrew Hawkins, to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Cleveland is just
they're a
it's
mess.
Hard to really, it's just hard. I mean, the RG3 thing, was exciting, and then that's over. So now you're like, okay, they're back to this. It's tough. I always just feel bad. I feel bad for Cleveland. I feel bad for their fans. I feel bad for I feel bad for the players that get stuck there. I mean, there's just something weird about Cleveland. They just can't, I mean, luckily, I will say, the Cavs won and they got their championship, but as far as the Browns go, like, they just can't seem to get out of this hole that they've been in for 30 years, No matter what they do. It's like they have the first pick, they, bungle it, and they have, it's just, then and they've also been killed with injuries this year. I mean, they've already lost a couple. It's just, I really wouldn't pick any. I mean, my only Cleveland advice is, pick whoever's playing against them. Really.
Right. I know it's so sad. It's so sad. What advice? What guys out there on the waiver wire in terms of wide receiver and running back do you like?
It's interesting. It's weird because it depends on the leagues, like in our fishbowl. I mean, the waiver wire is people are picking up names that I've never even heard of, and I'm like, I feel like I know I know my fair share here, and then I'm just seeing these names, and I'm like, well, wait, who's that? Should I know who that is? Well, I'm looking people up, but I think as far as, and I think the running backs, obviously Jordan Howard was a good one, this week. I actually was able to grab him last week because, Langford went down. So that's going to be, he's going to get, the majority of the workload. A lot of people are picking up, both Washingtons. You've got Dwayne and, D'Angelo or whatever. I think that's his name, yeah. The one in Detroit who, you've got Amir Abdullah went down. So, he should get some of that. I'm not really out of the whole Darkwa thing. I know a lot of people are into him. I'm not sure about him. I'm not running to grab him yet. I guess we'll have to see.
How do you feel about Bobby Rainey? The Giants just added him because Shane Vereen is out. He went on IR. How are you feeling about Bobby Rainey?
I like him. I liked him when he used to be in Tampa, right? I think he's been all right. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there. I mean, Jennings is still healthy though, right? Or did he get hurt as well?
I think he's either questionable or doubtful. He's been dinged up too. In PPR leagues, I kind of like Bobby Rainey, and he burned me in Tampa. But in fact, I just picked him up in our League of Law
right
to replace to replace Sammy Watkins. He was, kind of the best option. I didn't like any of the wide receivers. We'll kind of see how this goes. But
the running back thing has been crazy. I mean, even in Tampa, you've got Doug Martin's out. You've got Sims. And I guess maybe Jacquizz Rodgers. I don't know if he's really. I luckily in a league where I have Martin, I luckily got Sims also. So I just kind of plugged him in, and I'm moving along. But as far as running back injuries, I mean, I got this week 2. I lost Martin, I lost Arian Foster, and I lost Danny Woodhead. The same team, like 3 running backs. So I'm like, am I ever going to win again? I mean, it's rough. I was able to I grabbed Jordan Howard in that league, and I had Sims, and then Foster was my flex, so, I'm able to kind of stick somebody else in there, and hopefully I can salvage my season, but that was rough. That was in 1 week. And then actually I lost Keenan Allen the week before on the same team. And it's my main, my home league. So, and last year I actually went undefeated until the playoffs, and then I ended up losing. So I was hoping for a repeat, and that's not going to happen with that.
It's
injuries.
Interesting. I just jumped on NFL.com real quick, and they're saying that Terrence West could get the start this week. So maybe sticking, and which is kind of interesting. Deion Lewis set to return. In the next couple of weeks. I think probably after their bye, he's a guy who's out there. Is it time to stash him or not?
I think if you have room, sure, because I mean he's always, if he is actually healthy, then you've got Brady back, and it's kind of going to be a different animal there. For right now, I'm kind of amazed with how much work Blunt has got. I mean, he's been, I haven't actually in DFS this week. I've thrown him in a couple of lineups because. And I think they announced this morning that Garoppolo was starting. So, I don't know. I mean, it's that Patriots are just, it's amazing.
I don't trust.
It's
amazing, and they keep winning. And Jacoby Brissett had, a good game. Of course, now they're listing Garoppolo and him as both, typical Bill Belichick shenanigans.
Right.
But until Tom Brady comes back, I'm not going to rely on any of their fantasy players.
Yeah, I have Edelman, and it's one of those, I have him in a redraft. I'm going to start him, you kind of have to, but I don't love the fact that I do, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'll throw him in there. But, they're just incredible. It's unreal. I mean, it's just, I don't know when this, I assume when Belichick retires or whatever, that's when it'll end. But it's just the Patriots, they just, they just keep going. It doesn't matter what you do to them; they're still gonna, I mean, no one thought that they'd be, 4-0 when Brady comes back, and sure enough, we'll see. But it's kind of it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah. Speaking of Delaney Walker and tight ends, who are your tight end replacements this week? And then I'll let you get out of here.
Like I said, I like Doyle. I mean, he seems to be, And, and like I said, Miller, I really, I know a lot of people are weary of Chicago because they are pretty bad, but
Yeah.
Miller is, like I said, he's 4th overall right now in fantasy points of all tight ends. And
Yeah.
so, him and Hoyer were successful last week, so I would
I
definitely
just
throw
picked
him
him
in
up.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because, they're playing, the Lions are not good defensively,
Yeah.
and especially against the tight end. So I definitely would throw him in there too. And, it's interesting. You and I, of course, both, were on the Virgil Green train, and
Yeah.
it's,
I moved on.
you
I
know,
had to move on.
yeah, I had to as well, but, I don't know. Howerman had a couple catches last week, but, I guess the Broncos just really don't. I would just stay away, obviously, from any tight end,
Yeah.
in Denver right now until they can kind of figure that out. I mean, Howerman, there's so much talk about him coming out of Ohio State, and, and then he got hurt that first training camp, and then he got hurt again this training camp. And so it's like, I don't really know what they have in him. I mean, like I said, he made a couple catches last week, but it'll kind of be interesting to see there. I know a lot of people are on Fleener. I just, that Saints offense is just so kind of, there's no consistency there. So I personally don't like Fleener, like even for DFS. I know a lot of people do, but I'm kind of off him. I'm gonna stay with the guys that are kind of making it happen, week in and week out, which, like your Pitta, Doyle or Allen, or even Rudolph this week I think is a good play.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Jen, it's always so much fun. Thank you so much. I know we went back and forth a little bit. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen this morning. And, I look forward to a good game. I hope neither one of our teams have too many injuries this afternoon.
Agree. And as I told you, I'm completely 100% mentally prepared for a loss, so I'm not you're welcome to tweet at me. You're welcome to tweet at me if if Tennessee is up by a lot. I can take it. I'm ready. And you never know. Maybe the dogs will surprise everyone.
I suck at trash talk. I'm not. I just am not
I'm not a trash talker
talker.
either.
I'm just
No, me
not.
either, but
It's so funny because
no.
Rita, the NFL chick, and I kind of went through this with the Florida game, and I was like, I suck at trash talk. I feel bad that we beat you, and if we beat you today, Jen, I'm gonna feel bad about it, but be happy that my team got the win.
See, I don't feel bad about beating Florida ever. That would never happen.
I know, right?
But at the same time, yes. I mean, Tennessee, yes. It'll be fun either way, and I'll certainly be watching. So, and I appreciate you having me on.
Well, tell everybody where they
have
can
to do
find
this
your
again.
work and find you on Twitter and all that before you get out of here.
Yes, on Twitter I'm at the Monday Mommy, and for right now I'm doing mostly on 4for4 football. I have on Tuesdays I have a streaming tight end piece that comes out, and then I do a mailbag piece on Thursdays. So if anyone out there has any questions about anything, you can tweet me at the Monday Mommy, and I will answer them in my Thursday piece on 4for4.
And she's great. Give her a follow and read her work at 4for4. She does great work. Thanks again, Jen.
Thanks, Sharona. Have a good one.
You too. All right, we'll take another quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. All right. Shout out to Jennifer Eakins for joining me in that last segment. Great chat about the big game between Georgia and Tennessee. Tennessee should win this game. I'm just not confident. They haven't really played all that well this year. I hope that they win and all of that. And of course about the Denver Broncos, how great that they're playing and the quarterback situation there. And then we finished up with some fantasy football talk. Very interesting year in fantasy football. It does look like Terrence West might get the start. I'll take a chance on him, put him on my bench. I probably will not play him, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Good luck to you if you're playing fantasy football this year. It's injuries always seem to take a toll on my fantasy teams, and this year is no exception. A shout out once again to Matt Wood, who joined me in our first hour talking about debate night and the three candidates really. Jill Stein. We haven't really talked about Jill Stein. Her crazy is a bit too much for me, but We need to devote at least some time, I think, to her. We'll try to work that in sometime soon. And of course, shout out to Josh Taylor, who joined me on Wednesday with spouting his knowledge about the Steelers and in their season, their injury situation. And of course, we talked about Mike Tomlin, who, no, absolutely should not be on the hot seat. Mike Tomlin's a good coach. He's had a lot of success there. People get spoiled by success. And when adversity hits, it's a little bit hard to deal with. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. You can follow me out there on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Check out my website, Bat Talk with Sharona. We always post a wrap up where we kind of summarize what we talked about in every show, and we did that for our Wednesday show. We'll do that for today as well, and also check out my writing at Inside the Pylon. The last article that I wrote should drop probably today, maybe. My weekly DFS diary. Last week I actually won. I'm very excited about it. Still can't get over it. Not big. I like won $5, but hey, that was the price of admission, right? And so a win's a win. Uh, I went through and picked my week 4 roster, and I really do feel good about it. So we'll see how I do this week. I finally decided that hey, that Miami defense might not be that good after all. They've got a as Josh Taylor put it, they've got a Byron Maxwell problem. So I did not select Miami's defense. We'll see how my selections did this week, so you can see that article. And also, I'm doing an update to the Jason Morrow article that I did a few weeks ago when the Titans signed him. I may hold off on that. It's almost ready. I've done all the film work. But because it is Saturday and Delaney Walker is still questionable, and we might see more Jason Morrow Sunday against the Texans. So we may wait on that and see how that game goes. We'll see, but definitely check out all the great work that's being done over at Inside the Pylon. Also check out NFL Female. A lot of great stuff being done there as well, and always proud to be associated with women who are committed and who do such a great job. And so check it out as well. And also you should check out my Wednesday night show with Zach Law, Going for Two with Zach and Sharona. We had Nathan Powell on Wednesday night. That was a fun show. You can find it on my YouTube channel. I hope that you have a great weekend. Happy Saturday. It's the 1st of October, another month, another opportunity to start the month out right. So, as we like to say on here, try to be kind to people. It's so easy in today's world where the internet gives you anonymity. We could be a lot kinder to one another. Let's try to be kind to one another and remember that there's always a person behind the Twitter handle, behind the Facebook name. And when it comes to athletes, there's a person behind behind those names too. And I think we often lose sight of that and lack patience when it comes to guys who are struggling and what have you. I hope you have a great day. Have a great weekend, and we will be back next week. We're only going to do one podcast. It will probably be on Wednesday. You can find information for that on my Twitter page. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Bat Talk with Sharona.